Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to The Nature Connection, Science, Wildlife, and Environment Radio, with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy.
Hey everybody, it is May 27th, 2022, and welcome to Big Blend Radio's Nature Connection show. We are airing live from Lynnwood, Washington, so we're a little north of Seattle. Right, Nancy? North? Mm-hmm. I think we went past Seattle yesterday. But today, we went up. That's right. Yeah. You go up. No matter what happens, you just go up. Today's show is part of a live broadcast. It is, we're doing a lot of live broadcasts this year because it's a part of our 25-year anniversary of Big Blend Magazine's celebrating 15 years of Big Blend Radio right here on Blog Talk and 10 years of traveling full-time on our Love Your Parks tour. And you can keep up with everything. Go to bigblendradio.com. But every fourth Friday, we have Margot Carrera on the show. She's a fine art nature photographer and environmentalist, and she joins us as a co-host on Big Blend Radio's Nature Connection show. We talk about the environment. We talk about wildlife, plants, everything to do with nature. So welcome back, Margot. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me back. I enjoy being on the show. I'm doing okay. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy talking with the dynamic duo. I was just thinking how well the two of you work together and how well your skills are. And, with Nancy and her skills with the computer, which I know very little about, and Lisa is great at interviewing and sharing her knowledge, which is vast because she's done so much in this area and traveled. Both of you have traveled so much with the National Parks group. So thank you for including me, and I'm honored to be on your show.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being part of this, because I know you've traveled the world too and do so much about the environment, and the environment is a huge deal. We have Jefferson Marshall joining us a little bit into the show here. He's an English teacher and author of the Texas State Park Adventures book series for kids. And so he's going to be joining us to talk about all three of them. The newest one is called The Timeless Gardener. And he's been on the show before, and he's a friend of ours. We pet sit as we travel the country, right? So we're excited. Yeah. We know his cousin Cheryl, and we'll see her in a few days as we travel from the Pacific Northwest back to Lubbock, Texas. And when we met her, she said, "Oh, you've got to have him on the show. He does all this about Texas state parks." And we're like, "Well, of course." Cool. Because, part of what we do on the Love Your Parks tour, it started as national parks, going to national parks and teaching people about the parks and connecting them to communities. But it's really, it's gone into every single park matters. And it's really true, because it's about having space for people, but also space for the plants, space for, all the animals and habitat. The more we don't have these spaces, the more unhealthy we are as a country and as a planet. So we've really realized, you set out on one goal, and then next thing you know, you have to keep changing because you know what I mean, Marco?
Yeah, I do. And it's about also us as a society reconnecting with nature. And the further you get away from it, probably the more unhealthy you become. And the more you reconnect and see how important it is, the better we care for it. So it's so important that the parks are critical and even the community parks and the gardens and what have you. It's really important for us to get out and connect with nature.
There's also something we kind of slide over and forget is that without plants, we can't breathe. Mm-hmm. So, I was doing some research, and it takes 10 mature adult trees to provide enough oxygen for 100 people. Mm. Yeah, so as we chop down trees, I know there's other plants that provide some oxygen, but trees are the major ones. And we're talking about mature old trees, not brand new ones that are just growing. If we keep clearing landscapes, we're kind of cutting off our oxygen supply, which is kind of, do we ever even think about that?
No.
Yeah.
Or we wouldn't be doing it, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, that like when we go and we're going to build, here's a new bunch of tract houses. Do we think about, we're going to just clear the landscape? Do we think, wait a minute, apply the oxygen?
Yeah, because if you plant your new trees, it takes about 5 years to get anywhere with them.
Yeah,
right.
So is there any kind of control over, hey, wait a minute, people around the world, if everybody's chopping down trees, who's replanting to make sure we all have oxygen? I was just thinking about it the other day. I researched and I was like, I didn't realize, just how many trees we actually need to have. We always think of shade and shelter and beautification. Do we ever even talk about oxygen?
Oh, I have to jump in there because we did a couple interviews with Jad Daly, who is the executive director of American Forests. And American Forests, everyone, go to their website and look up tree equity score. Mm-hmm. What they have done is incredible work, and they were featured in our Quality of Life magazine, and they'll be featured in our Nature Connection magazine, which Bargo's a big part of. And here's the thing: it's really about how many trees we need to create tree equity. It's, if you look at it like a bank account, the less trees we have, the unhealthier we are. And when we look at climate change, the more trees, the better, and the right trees as well. And so they have satellite imagery showing what our tree equity score is right down to your very house. So you go to treeequityscore.com or treeequity.org, but you just type it in, or go to ourblendradio.com and just type in tree equity, you'll find it, or go to americanforest.org, you'll find it. Tree equity is really important, and we find that in the more affluent neighborhoods, there is tree equity. The less money we have, the less tree equity. And it's also very interesting because that's also about parks, and that's something we've noticed. You travel into neighborhoods that don't have as much equity, you don't have as many parks with shade, which means you're not as healthy. Kids start to have more asthma and things like that. You don't have the shade you need. You aren't able to grow as much, in your backyard because of not having the right shade and the right light. So this has really become a health issue. Trees clean the air. And so if you're in a neighborhood where there's railroads and things like that and trucks going by and you don't have the trees, you're going to get sick. And so this is why it's so important to have tree equity, because they really notice that it is those who are underserved do not get the tree equity. But if you're in the affluent neighborhood, you have trees and you have beautiful parks. So it's a very interesting dynamic. So look it up. I really encourage people to look it up. It's not me just spouting off an opinion. It is me telling you a fact that they have from satellite imagery. It is a truth. Yeah. And we can fix it and change it by planting a few trees. And I know most places, I know when we lived in Tucson, we actually worked with our neighborhood resources like our electric companies and things like that. They want us to go in and plant trees so that we don't use so much electricity. They want that. So they have plants that you can get on discount. Sometimes nurseries, there are programs for you to be able to get trees and plant them, and there are neighborhood programs. And if there's not, create one. So I just had to kind of go off of that with what Nancy was saying, because this is the biggest solution. And what Jad Daly and American Forest has been doing right now, they've partnered with President Joe Biden to plant more trees. They're part of the infrastructure bill. It's really huge what they're doing, and I love following them on all social media because they're really making a wave of positive.
Yeah, it's critical, actually.
Yeah. I'd like more trees in my neighborhood.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important. Now, you're in San Diego, right, Margot? And San Diego's, done really good, but there are definite areas where, they pave paradise and put up a parking lot, and we need to pave paradise with more trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we do. And, well, we have this drought going on down here. And so people have been taking things out instead of putting them in, and they've been putting more drought-tolerant plants in, which is okay, but they don't consider the trees. So they're less likely to put in the trees, and then they were also worried about the fires because there was a big fire that came through San Diego, and so now homes are kind of nervous having trees around them, thinking that they might catch on fire and set their home on fire. But I think the cooler you can keep the naturescape, the better. And
exactly.
And cooling things down can't hurt.
It's really good point you bring up. Yeah, go ahead, Nancy. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it is a good point, because if you go, we lived in 29 Palms. Okay, that's high desert. If you stood in the middle of the road in 29 Palms in summer and put your hands on the tarmac, you're going to get burned. That's how hot that climate is. That's how hot that heat radiates out to all the homes. And it wasn't easy to grow a garden there. You had to be careful about if you're planting against the wall that gets too much sun and things like that. But we managed to have a garden, and we could our personal landscape by 10 to 15 degrees. It wasn't easy. Yeah. It took some time, but it was worth it because your air conditioning bill goes down, number one. So you're not using as much resources. You're not paying as much. And it's pretty, and the air is cleaner. But, so sometimes we forget these major highways, how much heat we are generating with tarmac.
Well, you have to remember, you guys do pet sitting. And you got to remember that in the summertime, you can't take the pups out for a walk when it's, with the streets are so hot because the little feet burn.
We did a pet sit last year. We've done almost 70 pet sits in the last year and a half. And we pet sit. It's something we started during COVID. Well, we started through Trusted House Sitters. I got to give them a shout out. They're awesome. They came on our show, and the way COVID was happening, we couldn't just go to a hotel all the time, and it turned out to be the best thing on the planet for us. And when we did this pet sit in Prescott, and it was the same time we interviewed Jad at the American Forest, and we took little Paolo out, and he's a little dog, but I would walk him at 4 or 5 in the morning while it was nice and cool, because it was Prescott in the summer, Prescott, Arizona, and in the meantime, there were fires raging all around us. And I also wanted to, didn't want the dog to have the smoke inhalation. I didn't want it. But it's a beautiful area, and they had trees. I'm like, we're in the forest. We were actually backed up to the forest. And so it was really, we were watching the fire situation, but it's really true about what you say about the paw print. You've got to think, even a day that can get up to 70 degrees, what happens even on a sidewalk, not just the asphalt or tarmac. the sidewalk. And, you know, in third world countries where Nancy and I have lived, and you know about them too, you know, Margot, most of the roads are dirt, not as hot. And the more we do all this building, the heat rises. And in the desert, people tend to mulch their gardens with, I wanted to say kibble because we're talking about animals, rock, you know, all this gravel. And that also raises the heat. So we got rid of all of our gravel, and we planted plants and put mulch down with composting mulch. And, you know, in the desert, it really worked. We also changed our soil with composting. I mean, we went to town. But we did we planted a couple more trees. We lowered, you know, our heat and added a little bit moisture to the air, and things thrived, you know, because of the moisture came from the plants being there, and everybody was happy. We had a full ecosystem. I mean, we had roadrunners hanging up on the roof and then the garden. We had hummingbirds. We had everything, you know, all the neighborhood animals came to our house, including injured coyotes. You know, everybody came. But you know, and I remember we were doing all these wildlife shows, and our friend Adam, who you met from Bethesda Green, you know, they were like, don't feed wildlife. But he said at this point, he goes, if an injured old coyote comes to your door, you need to feed it. And we did. We opened our garage door, and the coyote came in. We fed him everything we could that we knew would be healthy enough, gave him water, and then he looked at both of us and peed and walked off. You know, we knew he was happy.
Okay, he wasn't peeing. He was actually saying, this house is mine.
Yeah, he was marking the spot. Yeah.
But it was like, this is mine.
But he looked right in Nancy's face, kind of like, you know, he marked her in a way, I suppose. But there's this thing about this nature connection. We were just at our friend's house in Sun River, Oregon. She took us to a nature center, Margot, which we'll do a show on. And we watched swans and little squirrels that you don't normally see, ground squirrels. But at her house, she's in a beautiful area surrounded by trees, and she does need to take some out because of fire. We had this whole conversation. She's a farmer. She's an environmentalist. But she knows when these trees are dead, you do need to take them out for fire. So there's this balance. So I'm just going back to the tree thing. And I will. We should do a show on trees on this, because I think you're really right. People are scared. We lived in Julian where the fires came. We evacuated 7 times in a year and a half. We know about fire. And yes, there is a way to balance your property. You don't take everything out, but you take ones that need to, and you don't not plant trees. You don't not plant. The trees are going to help you in some ways, because like I just said, that moisture that comes in. But what was so awesome, we're at her house, and raccoons came at night.
That's cool.
She has the squirrels, the woodpeckers. We watched blue jays. I mean, so this balance, when we talk about a nature connection, I think we're at this point that we need to look at every space on the planet, in our neighborhood, in our house, even if you're in an apartment. What can you do to have an immediate nature connection? Because it will benefit you. It will benefit the animals. The more we have a concrete jungle, the hotter it's going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they need their natural habitat. So, you know, when we sometimes we go for the gardens and we go for beauty, but actually some of the plants that we're putting in are not natural to the area.
Right.
And they either take up more water, or there's no butterflies, there's no birds that come and feed off these plants, or and the ones that they're looking for aren't there. So we should know what was natural to our area when we build our gardens. And I love that you talked about the stones and the versus composting and not composting. You used mulch, right? Yeah, I do that too. And when I came to my house here in San Diego, we've been here 3 years now. When I first came, I want to say that the soil was actually dead. I mean, nothing was growing and looking very well. The things that were already in there weren't looking very well. And when you fertilize, when you put what do you call it? When you spray for the bugs.
Insecticides and pesticides.
Insecticide, thank you. When you put insecticide on your plants, it's also going into the ground and it's killing out the beneficial bugs in your soil that keeps your plants alive. So by putting on composting or by putting on what you were doing, it really brings the soil back to life. The animals, the bugs, can grow again and help the plants grow. And, it's a symbiotic relationship. And the stones aren't going to help because it's going to dry up and actually heat the land and make it hard for those bugs to live. So it's very interesting. So now, 3 years later, I was looking at my garden and it's gorgeous. Things are coming to life, and we have plants that actually produce fruit that we didn't even know was there.
Cool. That's awesome.
So we have fruit. Yeah, we have a chirimoya tree.
Oh, no way.
Cool.
And when we moved in, it looked like a weed. And my husband said, take it out. And I said, no, we'll use it for shade. And so we nurtured it and we cut it so it would look like a tree. And now it looks like a beautiful tree and it's producing fruit. And so we said, God, we almost got rid of a chirimoya tree.
Wow.
But, do you know what to do with chirimoya? Because I tried to cook them once. And I was trying to explain this on a cooking show, and nobody understood what I was talking about because I was dating. See, this is back in my dating days, and I was trying. I was like, oh, okay. I know you eat chirimoya. Let me try and make chirimoya. Then I looked at it, and I have no clue what to do with that. I don't know what to do with the chirimoya, and to this day, I've never, because whatever I did to it, it was like when I cooked the artichokes for the first time. And did everything wrong, including eating the wrong part. Don't. It's not good on your digestive system.
Okay. So let me give you a lesson.
Yeah.
Next time you run into one.
Yeah.
You don't need to cook it. It's a fruit. And it's got lots of big seeds. Well, of course, you take the seeds out, and it's the meat, around the seeds that is the fruit that you eat. And it's full of nutrients and really good for you. And in Peru, they actually make chirimoya ice cream.
Cool.
And it's very delicious. And you could put it in your smoothie and blend it in your smoothie. So, it's really, really, really good for you.
So boiling it in a pot of water was not the thing to do.
No.
Well, it'd be like boiling your apple in a pot of water.
Yeah, really.
Well, it's a fruit.
Stew your
it
apples.
Did, and it stayed pretty hard. I'm going to tell you, it stayed. I just nothing worked. And listen, I ate the hairy thing of the when I did the artichokes. I did the wrong thing, and all I got was a bunch of hair and hard things in my mouth. And I was like,
no,
what was that?
No. She fried the artichokes. She cut them in half and fried them.
Don't tell people.
It was funny.
It's terrible. It was terrible.
That was funny. And it was more than funny. It was like, what would make you think you'd fry an artichoke?
Well, I came from Africa, South Africa, and I didn't know about these things. We had different plants, and different things. And so this is different in chirimoya. I was
it's funny.
I was dating a Mexican gentleman, and I thought, oh, he'll know what a chirimoya is. And then when he came over, and quite honestly, he didn't know either. So
they don't.
And we broke up
here.
shortly after.
No, but they don't.
Okay.
I think they're South American. They don't come from here.
I know. I just
Peru.
See, this is a big education.
Mexico has
a big
them.
education. of being new in this country and understanding. Okay, but they're in grocery stores everywhere, and I just didn't get it. I was like, what is this? You know,
it's an unusual fruit.
I'm going to go get one now.
Too.
You know, I'm going to go get one now.
Yeah, and let it get a little soft. And, you know, when it's hard, it's still too ripe.
They were all hard.
It's kind of like a mango. You know, when it feels, you know, when that kind of softness, then you're ready to, it's ready to open up.
I'm so glad you said mangoes. I just heard an NPR interview, was at BBC actually on NPR yesterday, talking about the mango situation in India and Pakistan. Here's some of the biggest producers of mangoes, and they're going down in production 70%. You know, you've got to think about
that's huge
cultures that eat these mangoes as part of their daily diet. Of course, they export as well. But this is a decrease directly because of climate change. So this is something, you know, as we talk about nature connection, when we lose connection and this climate change part, like you know, this is a real deal. I mean, we're seeing all these storms happening, and heat is happening, and heat does cause more winter, by the way. You know, we've got to look at, if we're not connected to nature and understanding it, we're going to lose our food supply. You know what I mean? I'm kind of, listen, I'm a mango eater. I don't want to lose the mangoes.
No, we can be resilient, though. I wanna put a positive spin on this. I heard another report, because we lived up near Napa, where the wine country is, and of course, you know, the temperatures are changing there, and so the areas that used to have, or usually have the wineries, are finding, you know, that some of the seasons aren't as good as they used to be. And then areas further north into the cooler sections are now warm enough to have wineries. So same with mangoes. I guess we just have to find the right climate as we move about, you know, the planet, and plant those mango trees.
Well, you know what? They're growing grapes in England for wine now because of climate change. So
exactly,
there is kind of a solution to instead of the big monoculture that we do, which is really pushing climate change. It's not the only factor, so I don't need 1,000 emails. But it is a factor. And so every little bit that we can do can stave off like this huge shift that we're going to go through if we don't do anything. And the shift may or may not happen no matter what, but we can slow it down and make it more livable if we take steps ourselves. Now, I get the monoculture means that whatever we buy from the supermarket, from produce people, makes things cheaper. But in the long haul, it's really not cheaper, because doing the monoculture makes it easier and cheaper for the farmer to harvest, which means he doesn't have to hire as many people. There's all kinds of factors, but then you have all these people out of work that we have to pay to help them survive while they're out of work. So when you look at the whole thing, because everything's connected, if you look at the whole thing, it isn't really cheaper. It just seems cheaper at the moment. If you understand, I'm probably not saying
it's a whole farm to table idea, where the smaller farms and closer to communities, and you buy from your local farm, or you grow it in your backyard. My granddaughter, I was really proud of her. I asked her what courses she's taking in college, and one of the courses that she's taking is aquaponics. It's an entire course for an entire semester. She's learning how to create agriculture through growing with the fish and the and the water and the plants and putting them again
we did.
And so so and for the first time that I've heard about it, she came home and started her own little garden in her mother's backyard, and
awesome.
And so I think there's some good things happening in the colleges.
Oh, sure.
There's some good things happening in homes, and with aquaponics, you can actually grow things in your garage. If
I
think a condo or an apartment and you don't have the land, you can grow your own vegetables in your garage.
Well, this is really exciting. And aquaponics and hydroponics, they're all very connected. And I want to just touch on both of what Nancy said and you said. The reality is, I think we're always going to have monocrops and monoculture, but it's going to die down a little bit. You know what I mean? It's going to have, basically there's room for everybody, and it's about balancing it out a little bit. I think we're always going to have farms that do mass production, because I think they're already there, and we need to still support those amazing farmers, because those farmers are feeding America and feeding the world, and farmers around the world are doing it. So I think it's this balance, and at the same time, yes, do some of your own. Support some of the small farmers, because it's the same thing as cars. You can't just tell everybody right now, stop driving what you're doing, and we're all going to hop in an electric car when we still have a lithium problem. So we are in we're in a mode of change. So you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Period.
Right.
You can't. So we have to just do these micro steps. But it is the same thing. We talked about gardening. You know what? Plant some. Hey, what is your favorite fruit or vegetable? Can you grow it in your backyard so you can just go out there and even have that activity? Because whatever you can grow in your backyard, it's a good activity for you and your kids and family, or maybe you have a community garden. There's all these little solutions. You don't have to do everything. And I think that's kind of this problem we have in the climate change, and everything's like, oh, we have to do everything. We have to stop everything we're doing. If everybody actually just did one thing, we'd be so far ahead right now.
And just morph into it.
And morph into it. Yeah. Exactly. And the aquaponics.
Evolve.
Exactly. It's an evolution in aquaponics. And yet we do have a ticking thing with climate change. But again, if we all just did one little thing, we could change things. Aquaponics, this is so exciting. We've been to some gardens, and I know before we get Jefferson on the show here in a minute, we want to talk about gardens. And gardens are kind of like zoos have had to learn to adapt into being a show and tell entertainment zone, which a lot have, and some are really about education and conservation. Everybody's a little different, so don't attack me. But, animals being taken out of the wild into a cage is not really any education. It's just putting an animal into a cage. But when there's zoos actually helping the wildlife in their backyard, and then also investing into programs and helping in conservation, like the California Condor Recovery Project. Zoos have been part of that. That's an awesome thing. And it's been very, very successful. So if we can do those kind of things individually, like gardens are doing the same thing. Gardens are showing us, demonstration gardens, what can we grow in our neighborhood? There's small ones. There's gardens showing us what the ancient crops were that we can grow. There are gardens showing us what we can grow that's good in the environment. And you can get involved you can volunteer and learn, go to courses and learn, or you can just start trying, but go there first. And I think that's something we can all do, is go to these gardens and start planting plants that go well with the environment by going to our neighborhood gardens, no matter how small those gardens are.
Yeah, they're also, I didn't know this, but they're creating seed banks. So that as plants are are dying off due to the global warming in some areas. They're making sure that they have the seeds and that we don't lose the species, and they're helping people in the areas that have the correct temperatures and what have you to grow these plants. So, and these gardens start with that in their gardens. So it's really interesting. I went to our local garden here in San Diego Botanical Garden.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it is. And they're really heavily into conservation in the community and abroad. And they just had an orchid show, and I was so amazed of all the species that they had in the show and how beautifully they had it set up. And they had a program there where you could visit a group. They had groups who are doing conservation work, had booths there, and I met this one group called Orchid Conservation Alliance. And they are literally going out to the areas where these orchids are growing and making sure that the habitat is being preserved and or refurbished. They're going to Ecuador, Colombia.
Wow.
A lot of them in Ecuador. I'm reading off their list, many in Colombia. Anyway, they have over 3,460 acres that they're trying to protect so that we don't lose all the different varieties of orchids. And just doing projects like that. And they're also working with the Salk Institute on global warming, using some of their species on site, like the cork tree. It's supposed to bring in a lot of carbon, a higher volume than other trees, and Salk Institute is doing a study on them, and they're going to have somebody from Salk Institute come and give a lecture. And so just things like that these gardens are doing to help in the process and turning things around. So we need to support them, and they're certainly supporting us.
You know, I was reading this one article. I have to go call that up and get the link for you. It was talking about whenever a plant or animal or bacteria species dies, and I know when people hear bacteria, they go, ooh, bad. But most bacteria turn out to be good. That when a species dies or goes extinct, that it takes at least 30 others with it in the next 10 to 15 years. And that's something that's something to think about. You know, that it's not just one that goes. It's never just one.
Yeah,
because we're so connected to everything that everything depends on something else.
Yeah, that's really true. You know, I have to say, I laughed because last time we were on the show with Margot, it was in April, and her segment, you know, she's on every fourth Friday, turned out it was Earth Day. And I emailed her before and I said, hey, Margot, you know, it's going to be Earth Day. And she goes, I know. I know. And then today I'm like, you know what, Margot? The show, I mean, we end up doing 2 live shows. Normally we do all the Zoom stuff, right? And I think this is funny because today turns out to be Rachel Carson's birthday. And, you know, I'm like, Rachel Carson is like, you know, when you think about the environment and her book Silent Spring and what came from there, and the EPA came from her, and Richard Nixon signed the EPA into power. He also signed the Wild Horse Preservation Act, by the way. You know, this era, we were trying to protect the environment. We knew then, back in the 70s. You know, But I think what the quote I put, and every day on Facebook and Twitter I post a quote of the day, And, of course, I had to do Rachel Carson. It's her birthday. And we're doing the Nature Connection show with Margot today. And, Nancy, what you just said really makes sense. The quote of the day is from her. Rachel Carson said, "In nature, nothing exists alone."
Yeah. That's true.
Exactly true. You know, I did that whole butterfly report. One day I was supposed to write one article about butterflies and their plants.
She wrote a book.
I wrote a book. And Nancy, I think I've told you this on a show, Margot. And Nancy was just like, "Lisa, you know, you need to get back to work." And I'm like, "This is work." She's like, "No, you need to get back to work. You've got ad sales to make. You need to deliver the magazines. You need to do this and
but
this."
what
I'm
if you publish it in the #1 seller?
I know.
That's working. Then it's work.
I know. I published. Well, we eventually put this whole thing. I said, "Here's my article that was supposed to be less than 1,000 words," and it turned out I did a plant report, every single plant that you should plant in the Southwest for what kind of butterfly. Then I was like, "Okay, but if you're in this area, you need to plant this for this kind of butterfly." And then I ended up in moths. I got stuck out in moth land. And I found out I got so stuck into it, but I really learned that there are moth species and butterfly species per like little microzones, and if you took out their one plant, they're going to die because that's all they eat. And then I was like, "Nancy, you want me to deliver magazines and make ad sales, but these butterflies will die. This skipper in this desert that's just down the street from us will die if they keep taking them out."
And then, if that species dies, there's 10 to 30 others that will die.
I know. Yeah. And so she let me do my moth and butterfly report. Because I was like, "Don't be the killer. Cool. You're a killer if you let this happen. I'll go do double work later, but you have to let this happen." And now I don't even know where it is, but you did a good job. You did. I worked hard on that. It was insane how much, just one little flower feeds. How many species and how much, like one tiny flower species in just one little zone. And hey, let's put a house in there. I get it. We all need to live. So we have to find that balance. That's what I'm saying. Can't we just get to a point of a little bit? We do a little bit. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, just do a little bit. Nothing extreme.
And the poisons that we use. Stop it. Just stop it. Stop the poison. So you build a new house. Fix the soil back to what it was.
Yeah, there's going to be poisons no matter what, Nancy.
And bring back the native plants.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting. When I moved into the house, there was not a single bee in my yard. Oh. So I had trouble with my first crops growing. So for the 2 years, I couldn't even grow the easiest one. Just that needed to be fertilized by the bee. And then I planted basil, and the basil went to flower. It was such a beautiful flower, purple flowers. And I decided, well, I'm going to let it stay in flower. And all of a sudden, the bees started coming.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, my vegetables are growing. I've got the tomatoes. I've got the green peppers and what have you. And so I couldn't grow them before until the bees came back, and because of the spraying, I guess, in the communities here, they were not to be seen anywhere. And I've never been in a community where that happens.
I think there's a balance. I think when you're doing mass production of crops, you have to have some of that, and I think you have that again, this balance of what can we do in our backyards. And then, like, you go into a park, a national park, state park, you have that balance as well. And the more we can create that balance, the better. I laugh about the purple basil flowers because we were just at our friends, like I told you, in Sun River, Oregon, and she was an organic farmer, and she's retired now. And, she's now in a place where it snows half the year. Like, literally, she has a glacier in her back patio, but, like, we're there at the right time. And she has these little plants, and every night she brings her plants back into the house. It's freezing half the time and not, and then sometimes it can snow. And we were there this time last year, and it snowed. And, she brings things in and out, her tomato plant and whatever. And yesterday we were out on the patio, and I'm like, the day before, and I'm like, this is magic. It's so sunny. And I'm like, why are you bringing your plants in? She goes, trust me. It's too cold now at night. You may be sunburned now today. But I was looking at her basil plants. She let them flower. And I'm like, Andrea wouldn't let them flower. Like she, but she knows, like she needs those to feed the tomato plants. And she knows, trust me, she knows how to grow anything. That lady can grow. She had the best strawberries in the entire county of San Diego. I mean, all of Southern California, big, sweet. I mean, she had the best strawberries, the best everything. Tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, like would just fall apart in your hand and just like, I mean, the best produce on the planet, and all the lettuce you could imagine. She fed, her produce went to like the Marine Room in San Diego, La Jolla, every James Beard top end Michelin star, whatever. She fed basically
restaurant, yeah.
But now she's retired, and we got to hang out with her for a couple of days, which was special. So hi, Andrea.
We should get her on our show, and she can give us some ideas.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good idea.
For years. Yeah, we can bring her back on for sure. She'll do it.
She would love that.
She would love that because she's really good. I mean, she when she inherited the farm, she can tell you that story. But she said, if I'm going to do the farm, we're going to do it organic so my workers can be healthy.
Yeah.
And she was very good, and she's still very connected to all her workers, and that we're working with her, and she's awesome.
And she proved it could be done, too.
Yes. So now we're going to play a short clip of music, and then we're going to get Jefferson on the show because he's here. So he's waiting. Good. You can't, he's Jefferson. Marshall. It's like, what a name. I feel like I should say Jefferson. Like, it's a great name. We're going to bring him on in a little bit, but we're going to play Orchids and Waterfalls because you got to see all those orchids at the San Diego Botanical Garden. So I thought we better play that song. And everyone, this is from Michael and Spider. It's from their album Iridescent Garden. You can get it on Amazon. So stay tuned. But everyone, go to CarreraFineArtGallery.com to look at Margot's beautiful photography. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Now that you'll feel all calm and cozy in Hawaii, we're going to Texas, everybody. Stay tuned. We've got an awesome guest joining us next. Everyone, you're listening to Big Blend Radio's Nature Connection show with Nancy and Lisa, the crazy mother-daughter travel team on the Love Your Parks tour. Plus, we have our special guest co-host, Margot Carrera, who's always on our fourth Friday Nature Connection show. And we're very excited to welcome Jefferson Marshall back on the show. He's an English teacher and author based out of Wolfforth, Texas. Yes, there's such a place, Wolfforth, Texas. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. But he's joining us today to talk about his Texas State Parks children's book series. He's been on our show before talking about the first two, but a third one is coming out soon. You can learn more. Go to TexasStateParkAdventures.com. So welcome back, Jefferson. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing really good.
Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, you are, but if you're on speaker, can you take it off? Because
it is on speaker.
Yeah, because I could hear myself. I don't like to hear myself. Okay. Did he go into the telephone? Are you there? Uh-oh. He might have turned himself off. Are you there, Jefferson? Uh-oh. I didn't do it. But Nancy, you've been reading his latest book.
I did read it.
The Timeless Gardener. The first two books he was on the show with were, the first one is The Creatures of Cap Rock Canyons. The second is The Palo Duro Lighthouse Race. And so the third one is about to come out. Are you there, Jefferson? Hello? Uh-oh, I think he turned his volume down. Margot, are you there? I got to make sure you're there.
I'm here.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay, so I can say, just having read The Timeless Gardener, that it's about Corner State Park, and it is about the park for sure, but he's really, really good. I admire this. He's really good about capturing the mindset of children and their relationships to their friends. And that's, because as I was reading this book, I mean, it's meant for children, but I'm a kid, so I could read it. And I just said, okay, that's Lisa over there, and that's her friend Melissa over there. I could take your childhood and put it right into his book.
Oh, that's
hello. Am I?
Oh, are you back? Cool. You're there, Jefferson. You're back. Cool.
Yes. Can you hear me okay? Am I sounding better now? I apologize. Yes. I was trying to switch out.
No, you're good. You're good. I just hung up on you, but it's okay to make sure you can come back okay. But you were here. Nancy was just comparing The Timeless Gardener to my childhood, so I'm glad you saved me in time before anything bad came out.
Yeah, because the characters in your book are really strong, and as I read it, I was saying, oh, that's Lisa, that's Melissa, sorry, Melissa, and identifying Lisa's childhood friends within your book. So I think you did a really good idea getting inside children's minds.
Well, I appreciate you for saying that. I mean, some of it is based off of, people that I've known growing up, and just really the desires and hopes of different friends of mine and people that I've known. So, I mean, they're not based off of anyone in particular, but you can't write fiction without, thinking back on your own life and experiences you've had and people you've known. So I really enjoyed the song that you were playing leading up to me, because it kind of had those doo-woppy vibes that that Garner really has. So
really.
I can't wait to tell you some more. Yeah.
I want to ask you about this because this is something interesting about Texas, right? So when we lived in Arizona, people would just kind of go, Arizona is just this big desert with some Gumby cactus, the little saguaros, and that's it. And yet we have waterfalls, and, I'm still proud Arizonan, even though I wasn't born there, but I lived there, and I'm proud Californian too. Margot's here. Margot's Californian too. Margot, were you born in California? Wait, I shouldn't say that. You're a proud Californian. Were you born in California?
No, Chicago.
Oh, don't mess with her. Don't mess with Margot. Okay. Yeah. I know Margot's family history is off the hook, insane. Like, the women in her family are strong, and so is she. So it's awesome. But, anyway, going back to the desert, people kind of have always think, like, Texas is this big plate of sand, the same as they kind of put, Arizona in. And Timeless Gardener, I think what's great is you have a lake, and, Margot was, when she first went to the San Diego Botanical Garden and saw the exhibit on all these orchids, I was like, well, Zion Park, this is off air, Zion National Park has orchids, and Everglades has orchids. Like, I don't think people would think Zion would have orchids, but they do. So, I mean, what about Texas? Do you think Texas, you have lakes and rivers? You have awesome lakes and rivers. You have more water in Texas than I think people realize. But do you think you have orchids? Do you think?
Oh man, you're asking the question for my mother-in-law, who is all about the plants and flowers. But I'm sure, I mean, if you can plant in like the San Antonio, Austin like region, I mean, you can plant them if they don't grow naturally. But oh man, I just feel so bad that I can't answer for sure whether an orchid is our natural. They're gonna find me and yeah.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna have to Google this during the show, because Big Thicket, we went there, and Big Thicket was on my bucket list of all parks, because we went there. Was it last year, Nancy? Do you remember anything? All I know is when we went to the Texas Hill Country, we did bring Cheryl some moss, some of that floating moss that's out there. And then when we went to Big Thicket and saw a snake, she said, do not bring that back for me. You can bring the moss, but do not bring the snake. Cheryl and Jefferson are related, and Cheryl is awesome. She's a friend of ours, and we go see her in Lubbock all the time. But Big Thicket has pitcher plants. And they're little carnivorous. They have Venus flycatchers and stuff in the swamps. And we went in winter, which was not the right time, but I still saw a snake, which was cool. It was very cool. But you have carnivorous plants in your parks. So if you have carnivorous plants, you have to have orchids. I'm just saying.
Okay. Texas is home to 50. No, Texas is home to 54 species of orchids.
Oh, see, I read 36 right here as I was looking. The grass pink.
Okay, so we went to two different places.
This is all Margot's fault.
I'm looking it up too. I got 36 species too.
I got 54.
Mid-broadcast, I'm already learning, that.
No, isn't it cool? Yeah, but this is great. This is great. Well, no, but well, here's the thing. I think we get so used to seeing the little orchids that you put an ice cube in the grocery store, and we forget that they come from somewhere. And all the plants that we get in nurseries and grocery stores they are adapted from the wild. And while we are currently in Washington State, I want you to know, Nancy and I have done a lot of filming on what happens to plants. So, we went hiking in Mount Rainier in 2010 when we started our tour. It's part of actually how our Love Your Parks tour got started. We went to Mount Rainier as the tour started, and went with a friend who worked in a tissue culture place of plants. And if you go look up Big Blend Mag on YouTube, you may find the original Mount Rainier video. She no longer works in the same place, but we went and looked at the plants up in the alpine. She was like, we were subalpine and then an alpine high. We were way up there. And she's saying, these plants will not work in your garden, but you want them. And so nurseries do all these things to make it work, that you can have them in your garden. In the same zone. Like what will grow in Washington State will not grow in Margot's backyard in California. But they do the best they can. So it's still kind of connected. But it's amazing when you think about over 30 species of orchids in Texas, that's pretty amazing. When we forget.
They say that there's a 10-acre preserve in southeast Texas that has at least 8 species of native orchids.
Welcome to the show. Jefferson, you're just going to go on an orchid journey now.
No, let's get back to the stories.
I know. Let's get to the timeless corner. I know. But this is, Jefferson, I want to go back to this because you're an English teacher, and honestly, Jefferson can write, okay? So he knows English.
Well, thank you.
There's no typos or grammar issues in his
and
books
he knows
at all.
Kids. He knows kids.
But you know kids. What got you? I know we've talked about this a few years ago on the show. I think we talked to you when we were in Madison, Wisconsin, in the snow the last time.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, we're going back there, by the way. But anyway, and we did go back, believe it or not. In spring, we're going to do all 4 seasons. But tell us a little bit about what got you started on the park adventures in Texas state parks, specifically for kids.
Well, I think that in our last conversation we had talked about, Texans love Texas, and we just have a love for our state, and we love to share it. But for me, like I've always been an outdoor person ever since I was a kid, with my dad taking me around to historical sites, and then my mom doing the same. And we just love to be outdoors, and so it's just a passion that I've had to share. Growing up, being a teacher, to then share the thing that I love probably more than English is just the outdoors. And so I remember, like, when I would go experience a place, I want to take that place home with me. Or if I'm not physically able to travel somewhere, I still want to experience it. And so the way to do that is through reading. And so my desire through this is like Texas is a big place, lots of different landscapes, lots of different flowers. You said something about the desert. Yes, we have that. It's mainly the El Paso, Big Bend region. And then, on the cover of Garner, we've got lakes and flowing rivers, and then we've got swamps and ocean.
That's cool.
And so it's such a large state, and I just want to be able to share, like, there's so much outdoor adventure to be had and experienced, and the best way to get families to experience that is honestly through their children, because I think children are far more adventurous than their parents lots of times.
Yeah,
and
I think kids read your book and they'll get their parents to take them to the park.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about climate change at the beginning of this, and this is not a political conversation at all. It is obviously happening, and things are changing. But do you feel, as a teacher and understanding kids and getting them to parks, that they will understand a better connection than the walls of their home? You know what I mean? That when they go to a park, they'll understand about protecting the land more than if they didn't go.
Yes, I mean, definitely. While I was waiting and y'all were finishing up your first part, you used a quote, and I don't remember who you said, but you said nothing exists alone.
Rachel Carson, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was thinking, like, leading up to this, you were asking, what's the purpose of kids being outside? And it was less of a question of what is the purpose, and I rephrased it as what isn't the purpose, because everything about us, our very creation, we're not plaster, and we're not paint, and we're not plastic. We're living, breathing organisms. We are nature, So just everything in us, I think there's an innate desire for us to be back in nature, but we get so confined sometimes in our four walls that we forget that, and sometimes we just need to be taught sometimes to get back outside and remember who we really are. And you don't have to convince a kid to love the outdoors once you get a kid outdoors.
Right.
You have to convince a kid to get outside. And I say kid, you have to convince anyone to get outside, because we get stuck in, habitual ways.
Video games and...
Yeah, video games, television, whatever it is. But once you get out there and you realize, you can survive it in some cases, like you begin to love it. And so you get the itch to be back where you belong.
Oh God, it feels so good. Seriously, it is. I mean, Nancy and I travel, we pet sit, and then, as we travel, but we have our moments of, we document parks and public lands,
And
so
like, cool.
When we have these days of non-computers and, I mean, it's like the other day we watched pronghorn antelope. We saw bald eagles, multiple bald eagles. We saw marmots. We saw magpies. We saw shoveler ducks. We saw grebes. We saw, I mean, I could go on and on in one day what we saw, and the adventure was so big. We were all three of us, Nancy and I, Andrea, our friend, children in a candy store, and we didn't want it to end. And by the time we got home, we're all like, pooped. We're done. But we just were like, but wait, the raccoons could come.
Yeah.
We're all like, dude, so it's like when you have that excitement and adventure, and I think as adults we get so spiraled out. But I want to ask you this. You're a teacher, and obviously Texas has had a really sad event happen. And I just can't even imagine what everyone is going through with that. Parents, families, loved ones. I mean, it's traumatic.
Yeah.
And kids and family, and you're a teacher, and we're friends with many teachers too, and going to school, it's become a very scary kind of thing. And I wonder about the solace of nature for families. And also because kids going to, let me just put it this way, the reality is kids have to have some kind of element of fear right now in regards to the climate change thing is scary. I know we've done interviews with kids on it, that they're scared and they're taking action, but there is an innate fear of what's going on in the world, and you can see it because of all the wildfires and extra hurricanes and tornadoes, etc. And obviously there's wars going on too. It's kind of a scary, let me just put it scary, and I know you're a new dad, so I don't want to put pressure on you as your teacher, etc. But, I mean, being a kid right now is not like when we all went to school, right? Let's just put it that way. So how do you feel about nature, that importance of going into nature for kids and families right now?
Well, if I can, you mentioned what's happened recently. The setting of this park, Timeless Gardner State Park, is 20 miles down the road from where that occurred this past week. And so leading up to this and thinking about that, like as a teacher, as somebody who just loves that area and loves the people in that area, my heart is hurting for those individuals, and it's just something that kind of shook us again, and just a horrible tragedy. And so I just want to say, like, I'm reaching out prayers as we all are towards them. And it's a giant question, like what is nature's role in all of that, and how does solace in nature like bring comfort? It's just a huge question. And so this is kind of stepping away from kids in particular, but just adults as well. Like whenever I have a time in my life that I just don't know where to go or where to focus, my wife always tells me, hey, you need to leave the house and go camping for a day or two by yourself. And that's time for me to kind of refocus my thoughts and to just spend some time with God, and to just kind of be in His creation. And I don't know if I'm always seeking answers there, or if answers don't come, and sometimes that hurts too much. But I know that's part of the reason that He gave us water, and the trees and the birds whistling in the trees. Like, to be surrounded by all of that is kind of like healing in its own right. And it's always been that in my life, to get away and to be in nature, and to maybe not know the answers, but to know that there's comfort there. There's so many songs about, like, just going to the river, and these regrets or these feelings or these emotions, just kind of like letting them be washed away like a balm. And so that's kind of what it's always been for me, is nature's healing in that regard.
Yeah, there's always this kind of thought that we're supposed to control nature.
No, yeah.
Rather than live within it. And, personally, my viewpoint is, when we start to live within it, we will then not be so violent. Nature can be violent. I mean, if you watch a lion take down an antelope, that's not exactly pleasant.
Or a hurricane. Right?
Yeah. There's things in nature that does what it does.
Yeah.
But we're the experiment. We're supposed to have the mindset not to do it. And we, like guns and things like that, and all the stuff that happens in our society, we knew better long ago not to do it.
That's why I brought it up, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Jefferson. It's just,
I don't know.
It is. It's what's happening now, and I feel like the more we go into nature, the more we experience the awe. And I think that's what you're talking about, going out there where you have the awe, where you watch. Yeah, Rachel Carson was right. I went through, I'm reading everything she's done, and that quote was like, we're not, there's no one person, there's not one species. There's everybody. A bee relies on the flower for the pollen, same as the butterfly, the birds want the nectar, and everybody has this. It's all symbiotic, right? And it's the same in human beings. You don't have a business without another person. You don't have a teaching without teaching kids. You can't teach without somebody there.
Nothing's going to exist.
An artist can't
on
have
its own.
art without a viewer. You can have art, but if it's just sitting in a room, who cares? That's good for you, but the art is not an art until someone sees, ooh, there's an art.
Or appreciates it.
Right. So it's kind of this symbiotic thing, and I think the more we retract from nature, the less we have that symbiosis. And I love to use that word because it's my favorite thing when I learned in biology in school, like symbiosis. And then like how we all, like the mistletoe and the birds, and how the mistletoe and the trees worked. And then sometimes it wasn't good, and how everything played and worked together. It was like the best thing ever. And I think right now, this is the most perfect time to talk about how we work together. And nature provides that. You know, saguaros are in bloom right now in Tucson, in Saguaro National Park. And
that's beautiful.
If you don't have those blooms, you don't have the bats being fed, the flickers aren't being fed, and, you know, it's that
and
thing.
They're not pollinating.
Right.
They're
so
not
give
pollinating
us an example.
The next generation of cactus.
So Jefferson, give us an example of, is it Gardner Park, right? It's Gardner.
Gardner, G-A-R-N-E-R.
Yeah, give us an example of symbiosis there between the plant, like, or an animal or something of nature, like of humans, right, going into the water. That's a symbiosis in a way.
Yeah. So I guess when they built Gardner, it was in 1935, and it was part of the Civilian Conservation Corps. And so it's always funny, even when I'm there, when they constructed it, they used the natural limestone shelf that they had in that region to build most of the building. So even when you're like, as silly as it sounds, even when you're on the dance floor, that dance floor was made in the 1930s with limestone from that area. So you just feel more connected to nature, knowing like, oh wow, they're still using the resources that they had around them to create these wonderful man-made settings as well. But I don't know, you're asking that question about the symbiosis of nature, and it's like I don't know, there's just something about floating on the river, and I'm kind of distracting, or I'm kind of pushing everything out and just watching the nature around me, and everything's kind of at peace. Like, I'm not telling my wife, but far across on the opposite bank, you can see a snake on the surface of the water. I'm not telling her that part, but I'm watching the snake, and it's just there, and it's a part of the ecosystem. And then you see like the squirrels above you, and I'm sorry. Continue.
It's so okay. So getting rid of the four walls and the roof, the ceiling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So where we began out in nature, so we're going to just, in my mind, going back home and trying to be comfortable with it. Okay. Now I'm very comfortable with it, but not everybody is. When you get rid of the four walls and the ceiling and you go outside, even through the night, with maybe a little campfire, because that's a little bit of protection or warmth that you probably need. But there's
marshmallows.
There's for some people it's scary. For others, it's I'm coming home. Everybody's different, but I would encourage everybody to give it a try more than once to become comfortable with, camping, stay overnight outside, listen to the wilderness. Good. There's songs at night, insects, birds. There's songs at night. I don't know. It's beautiful.
You got a good point, Nancy, about give it a try more than once.
Yeah, because
people are afraid of nature, but this is the thing, and I'm not doing a PR thing for anybody, but cabins and campgrounds, if you're not used to camping, cabins are great. There's glamping, this luxury camping is a way to get used to it, and maybe you stay there in that way. RVs, obviously, and everything. Please learn how to drive them. I'm just saying, as a person driving on the road, I'm just got to say that. Like, you guys don't know what you're doing. Half of you out there. I'm just going to put it that way. I'm just like, can you go take a course? But anyway, I'm just being real. You guys, I'm seeing so many RV crashes now as the sales of RVs go up. You guys need to take a course.
I don't think it's the driving. I don't think they're logical. I don't think
I don't know. I don't know. But there's courses to be had, and just do them. But but I'm going back to
I think they're
you don't have to
heavy.
go. You don't just the glamping. We have friends who have glamping resorts who have everything to tent camping to all of that, RV places and whatever. And they've all said that glamping was a way for people to start. And then next thing you know, they went and they said, screw the glamping, we're going dirt. We're out in the dirt 100%.
That's so much
so it's kind of a stepping stone, which is really nice to see. So
awesome.
You can do that. And really, it's so magical. Once you get out there, like I know, like when we were in Sun River, to see the stars, like really see the stars at night.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mind-blowing. And Jefferson, isn't that a huge deal? I mean, in your books, you talk, I mean, the 3 books, for kids to be outside and even understand the stars, right? And geology.
And so that was the purpose of the series, was what you were talking about. The state parks were invented in Texas and around the nation to give people that opportunity and that segue into nature. But the best thing has been, I mean, I've enjoyed writing the books, but as a teacher, when someone has read my story and then they come back and tell me, we went there afterwards. I've enjoyed most stories from kids about, like, you know, we decided to hike the Lighthouse Trail, which is in the 2nd book, and we should have. They always say we should have taken more water, but we made it. And we were tired and exhausted by the end of it. But our son said, like, he was done, he was exhausted, and we thought he didn't enjoy it, but then he said, when are we coming back? You know? or when I took a group out recently to Caprock Canyons, I say recently, it was back in November, we took a group of about 10 kids and parents, and along the trail we saw a baby rattlesnake that had not grown its rattle yet, which, if you know anything about rattlesnakes, is very, 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 very venomous, and that one will kill you faster than the adults will, because it can't control them, you know. And so for them, you know, the terrifying experience, but we're like, okay, stay back, and, you know, for them, scary, but they can't wait to go back into nature and see stuff like that again. So that, to me, is the moments I live for and have enjoyed with the series. Is every adventure looks different. And, you know, I've written 3 little silly stories about kids going out into the outdoors, but the adventures are so much more, it's their own. Like, they've read the book and now they're going out and, you know, they've seen something for themselves. Oh, that's what I live for. Because I get to tell them, cool, like, go have more of your own. You know what it is. Like, you know what it's like. Any wonderful adventure in the outdoor, I feel like, requires determination and grit a little bit, because you are going to get, you know, scratched up by something along the way, or if you're in a river, you're not going to realize that river's current flows quicker than you thought it might, and so you know, you've got to have determination, but there's also humility. And so I like it when kids come back with their own stories.
Oh, I love it.
Well, because they're reconnecting with who we were.
Yes.
And still are when we take the time to do it. I mean, sometimes it takes, like, we go back to the river in sports mode with dinghies and river rafting and all that. Okay. And that's awesome to a point. But, you know, because now we made a sport out of doing something we used to have to do to survive. Like, we had to know the rivers, we had to know, you know, when the storms are coming, we had to know all these things about nature, which we, over the decades, have separated ourselves from and built houses to keep ourselves safe
and our
from.
cars know how to do it instead of us.
You know, so to reconnect with who we really are, where we came from, you got to start with nature.
I want to go to Margot as a photographer. You know, here Jefferson is as an author and English teacher going, hey, I'm going to now spread this part, you know, getting kids involved. Is it a similar path for you, Margot, in your photography?
my photography, I have some things that I photograph that I think go well in children's rooms so that they can enjoy them in their room. And a lot of those are more of the animals that are out in nature. Mm-hmm. And people collect them. They put them in the nursery, the children's rooms. But I just want to, I've been sitting here listening, and I just keep thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could do a group overnight, in one of your parks, and the kids could get your books and read your books, and for the kids that went through this horrific event. I don't know, it just keeps coming to me, and I can see you all around a beautiful fire, and people getting to talk to one another, and maybe some guitars out there singing, and just some massive healing going on out in the park near where that occurred. Just putting it out there. You don't have to do it.
That's a great idea. No, because when people hurt each other, then other people step in to heal.
Yeah, yes. Because that's humanity, and it gives you reason to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I write a story about a place, like, these are actual places, and there are actual people that live here. And so I tie myself to that place. And so I definitely see a future where, a time frame I don't know, but I definitely see a future where, I want to be in that area, and I want to be doing things at that park, because it's a place I love, and you can't love a place without it. Parks specifically, you can't love a place without loving the history and loving the people there. And this place wouldn't exist without people.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, the natural landscape would, but like, people came here and gathered here way back in the 1930s. And there's stories of this place throughout the past 100 years of people gathering at night from all around the region to dance together. That's one of the large things about Garner is underneath the stars throughout the summertime, there's singing and there's dancing. And so
that's
I desire to be tied to this community, and like you're saying, I hope I get the opportunity to in the future, as this book ends up in the bookstore, or people enjoy it, to get to be a part of that community in ways I can, and share that love and that passion for the outdoors there. And so, I really appreciate that. I don't take that responsibility lightly. I feel very attached to these places I write about, because these are lives. This is nature. These are lives. So
retreats can be so healing. Even not just nature, but just being on a retreat and being together, and then, like you said, dancing under the stars, or singing by a fire, or s'mores, or what do you call those?
and there's a feeling like, Nancy and I have been through a lot of things, and Nancy lost her brother to gunfire. Murdered in gunfire in Florida. And we've been robbed by gunpoint. I've had a guy put a gun to my head, and it takes time to heal from this, and it's going to take time. Even what you're talking about is hugely important, Margot, and it will take time, and it will take time for those things, because you have so much PTSD afterwards that I can't, and it comes in different waves and stages. And it just takes time, and it's community. And for, I think, Jefferson, your book is reminding people of what is there. You know, the park being 20 minutes away, it reminds people there's solace to be found and a place of safety. Because I know when that guy had a gun in my head, then I was scared at every stoplight I went to, because I realized anybody could get into my car and have a gun at my head. And it freaked me out for a very long time. But now, like, anybody does that, I'll kill him. But, no, I mean it, though. It is going to take time for the fear that comes after this. Is in so many different ways. You're scared that it could happen again in your own home. It's such a violation. So when you realize that kind of thing can happen, your whole world is 100% upside down. And nature is one of those places that once you go out there and you realize nature hugs you back, she does. I recently got really sick. I had a really big asthma attack. Went outside, and nature literally healed me just by a breeze of good, clean air. Nothing else helped me. Medicine, none of it. It was just sitting outside helped me. And I went, God, it's all I needed was to be outside with nature. And I really believe that. And so what your books do, getting kids back into nature, because whenever you go in nature, you learn some piece of confidence. Like you were saying, the river's going to be higher than you thought. You were talking about that. Everything will throw a little challenge at you, and when you step over that challenge, you're going to get better. You have to take action. You can't sit at home. When something traumatic happens, you're going to be upset, and the fear comes back. And the longer you sit there, the longer the fear stays. And the quicker you take action and go and start doing. I had a friend, when I had that gun at my head, I had a friend make me drive to his house in the middle of the boonies, and I had to go through a bunch of stoplights, and I freaked out. I mean, I almost peed my pants, and I'm going to say I probably did. By the time I got to his house, him and his wife had a meal. They're like, you made it. And I was like, I did. And this huge happiness came over me. Like, I did it. Like, okay, it's not going to be like that every time, but you don't forget what can happen, right? So all I'm saying is everyone's going to take their steps of healing as they can. There's fear. The best way to overcome fear is to take an action step. And if you can go into nature, you're going to get your confidence, because you're going to have to look, is there a snake? Is there a butterfly? You're going to start to see the wonders of the world, intricate wonders, and that's the beauty too. So I think what you're doing is so important, and now is now.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's. I named it the Timeless Garner.
Yeah, right.
And so there was purpose to that. I've always loved. I just went blank on the name. A river runs through it, and there's a quote.
Free holy. I want to say, I kept saying it the Frito chip, but anyway, I called it the Frito.
No.
Sorry.
And there's a quote at the end of it about like words being written underneath the rocks, and the words are like have been there since the beginning of time. And so whenever I think of this Frio River, I think of, they built the park in the 30s, but that river's been there for who knows how long. And I think of all the things that nature has seen and all the life that has occurred around, that place. And so it kind of, that brings me humility of like, it's been around a whole lot longer than we have. And the things that river has seen, and, people who have fallen in love and and grown old together. And there's just so many stories and so much music and magic and life that's occurred throughout time that I don't think I just wrote this for kids. I think I wrote this for everyone this time around.
But if you go out into nature and you're sitting by a waterfall or a pond, and it doesn't really have to be like you have to be at the biggest waterfall or the greatest this or that in nature. If you can clear your mind and just sit down and block out the Western, when I say Western, I mean society. You can block out that and just hear what's there in front of you. That's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then when you come back to the Western world or the Eastern world, wherever you live, when you come back to the human side, you can think better. You can see things clearer. Not in just your business landscape, your household landscape, but in the landscape of nature. And I'm not even just saying Earth. I'm saying because there's other worlds, maybe. I don't know.
Dude, Nancy's beaming up.
No. Well, you don't know. Do we know? We really don't know.
No, we don't.
We don't. So I'm not going to go, there isn't, because I don't know. I'm not going to say there is because I don't personally know. Possibilities are possibilities. But just to be open, guard yourself, be open, and just to relax and we put so much stuff on our shoulders that doesn't need to be there on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes you just need to go outside, close your eyes, just hear the birds singing. And sometimes I hear birds singing. I'm like, I wish I was you. I just want to go up to the tree and sing and not have all this other stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm. They have their fights too. I mean, because their habitat's been taken away.
No, I was going to say, if you get there, then you find out they got as much stress as we do. Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Do.
But just to relax sometimes and enjoy nature, soak it in, let it breathe, and be one with it.
Mm-hmm. Even reading your book can take them away from stress, you know, because you're putting them in nature. You know, you're transporting them, their minds, and taking their minds away from maybe what's going on locally, and bringing them to nature with your books. And
exactly.
I actually used that this week. I had to have an MRI. I don't know if people have had to do that, but this was my head was like had this box over it, and then they put me in the machine, and I could hardly breathe, and I'm sitting there, you know, I'm not claustrophobic, but I was claustrophobic, and so what I did is I transported myself to nature. I said, I'm not going to sit here and worry about whether I've got enough oxygen. I'm going to take myself to a lake, and it was getting hot in the MRI, and I'm going to go for a nice swim in this crystalline clear lake, and I just imagined myself being in nature and how beautiful it was, and it was. You transport people either through your mind or being there yourself or through your books, right?
I love that, Margot. You're so right. Because books stimulate you, and you have a story, and with a book, you carry on with the characters, right? And I think that's what's so great about your characters, Jefferson, is that, you know, kids are going to identify with the characters, whether it's with them themselves or their friends. And so that gives them a way to keep moving forward, you know, and create that dialogue.
Okay, now I'm out in nature. I don't know if you can hear.
I was wondering what that was. I'm like,
well, it's getting noisy and indoors, so I thought I'd go outdoors, but the wind's blowing and the birds are singing.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's all good. But yeah, Jefferson,
Sorry.
I mean, do you feel that with the characters in your books that's something that kids can connect to and identify and kind of build off of as they grow?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. These characters are growing, and I'm kind of, as an author, you kind of learn about your characters the more and more you write about them. So I'm kind of learning more about who these people are in their own right. And from the nature side, to keep talking about places in Texas, but I'm also equally excited to see where these characters go. And so I already have in mind a special moment from when I was growing up is when I would be able to go into nature with my granddad. And so I'm excited for, we're here talking about number 3, but for number 4 to be a story very much about a grandchild and a grandfather. And so I'm excited to share that dynamic because I feel like that's a very important one as well. So
cool. So tell us about this one out now, book number 3. When is it out, and how can people get The Timeless Gardener?
Well, first I have to apologize because it was supposed to be out, a month, maybe 2 months ago. But like you mentioned earlier, I have a 1-year-old daughter, and so she is a handful, and so it's taken longer than I expected to get Garner out, but for good reason, because I've been getting to know her. But July, and hopefully July 1st if I can shoot for it, but it will definitely be out in July of this year, so within the next month. And it'll be available on Amazon and on my website as well, TexasStateParkAdventures.com.
And everyone, right now, you can still get The Creatures of Caprock Canyons. You can get Deep Palo Duro Lighthouse Race, so book 1 and 2. Excuse me, I'm still coughing. Go to TexasStateParkAdventures.com. That's the website, and he's also on Facebook and Instagram under the same name. Jefferson, it's so good to have you back on the show. I think it's kind of timely, don't you think, that this is how it ended up?
Yeah, it keeps happening. I released the first one during COVID, and so the same month I released my first book is when all the state parks shut down. So it's kind of, and that was 2 years ago. It's kind of how I feel like they kind of show up when they need to be, and so this is the time for this one, and I'm holding on to that. So I hope that it does bring adventure into people's lives and bring fond memories and peace as well. So.
Well, I have to say I'm an adult, and I started reading it, and I read the whole thing.
Well,
I enjoyed it, and I was like, okay, is this an adult book or a kid's book? And I loved it. I thought it was cool.
Well, hopefully, I think a good book you can't tell either way.
That's why I was like, okay, this is okay. This is written for kids, but I was like, no, this is actually, and I think parents should always read books before the kids do, and they will enjoy it, and then they can have a discussion when both parties have read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
They have something. Yeah, they have something to identify with, which opens avenues to further conversations. Just saying.
Yep. Good.
Margot, you have really good bird life going on in your garden. I'm just saying.
Thank you. They want to be on the show, I guess.
I think. I mean, I love it. I love it.
It's cool.
Anything before we go, Margot? Any questions or comments for Jefferson or anything?
No, I just honor what you're doing, Jefferson, and keep it up. And retreats are in your future. That's all I have to say.
I think so too. I think so because
it sounds wonderful.
You understand how to connect with kids and families, right? And so I think Margot's really on the same. She's right. And it's not just, timeless garner and those regions. And by the way, we did get to a park in the hill country. We went to 2 state parks.
Oh, good. Which ones?
We went to Lost Maple.
Yes.
And then we were in cowboy. Listen, there are real cowboys out there. Like we were in Bandera, and we were photographing the lighthouse, and a bunch of cowboys drove by. Like really, like it was like
by. They rode in the parking
lot.
No,
they were in trucks, but they were cowboys. They were real cowboys. Like seriously, it's real.
Cowboys.
It's the cowboy capital of the world. They were there, and I'm like, Nancy, look. And she's like, it's cold. I'm like, no, look out your window. Look, it's not cold anymore.
Like, look, cowboys.
It got a little hot around the collar. Woo-hoo. There were like a lot of cowboys. But and then we went to one. I think it was like, it was outside there. Outside of Bandera Hill, Texas Hill, I don't know, but we went to 2, and it was right after that big freeze in Texas. Not the recent one, but the one before. Anyway.
Yes.
And everybody was scared that nothing would grow, and we found all kinds of little wildflowers, little ones were popping up. Nature is resilient, it was amazing.
The native plants will come back.
And they did, and it was amazing. The hill country is beautiful. It really is. And they have a lot of wineries out there. But we didn't even go to them. but we didn't do that.
Right.
But where we were staying was a vacation rental, which is now sold, unfortunately. But we were out there, and they had all this wildlife that came into the yard. And so one day, we're supposed to do all this running around and tourism stuff, and we just sat there. We're like, there's so much nature and so much bird life that we just sat there all day long. Watched the butterflies and all the buck and the animals, and we're like, we're not leaving.
Awesome.
It was beautiful. So anyway, Texas is beautiful and diverse. So go to Jefferson's website, again, everyone, TexasStateParkAdventures.com, and also keep up with Margot's amazing, beautiful work. And listen, she talks about wrapping yourself in nature, whether it's in scarves or in your house. Go to Carrera Fine Art Nature Photography. There's Carrera Fine Art Nature Photography.com, but Carrera Fine Art Gallery.com, right? Am I getting it right, Margot?
CarreraFineArtGallery.com.
There we go. So go there, and then we're going to close now with a song, because this is a song from our late friend, Jimmy Yessian from the Tall Men Group.
Bummer.
And I have to play this song because he would love this right now. And this is called Uncle Remus Tales, and we always play it when we do nature shows and kids shows, and and this just makes sense today. So cheers to you, Jimmy, up there.
Yeah.
And here it is, Uncle
Love
Remus
you,
Tales. So everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jefferson. Thank you, Margot.
Thank you so much for having me.
Here it is, Uncle Remus Tales.
He come home from work, I was already in bed. Mama fixed him a plate, I'd stay awake, 'cause I knew once he was fed, he'd climb them stairs, open the door to my room. With a pat on the head, he'd sit on the edge, read me a story or two about Brother Bear and Mr. Cricket. Old Brer Rabbit loved jumping in the thicket, and brave King Lion saving Sister Cow. They lived together in them woods somehow. Every time, without fail, into dreamland I'd sail, with Daddy reading them Uncle Remus tales. Now that old storyteller, he lived in a cabin in the South, with a corncob pipe bouncing just right. Stories flowed with the smoke from his mouth. And Daddy would read 'em just the way they was written. Damn creatures came alive at my bedside, sometimes scared me a bit. Like when Sister Fox met Swamp Gator, that gizzard eater nearly ate her. Don't be frightened now, Brother Frog, you'll be safe in that old hollow log. And every time, without fail, off into dreamland I'd sail, with Daddy reading them Uncle Remus tales. Now I come home from work, my boy's never asleep. I fix me a plate, climb them stairs, into his room I will peek. Him and his friends are playing them video games. I shake my head, shut the door, think to myself, what a shame for poor Brother Bear and Mr. Cricket. Nobody cares, Brer Rabbit's in the thicket, or brave King Lion saving Sister Cow. Wish my daddy would read me one now, like when Sister Fox met Swamp Gator. Man, that gizzard eater nearly ate her, and every time, without fail, off into dreamland I'd sail, with my daddy reading them Uncle Remus tales. Some nights we'd both fall asleep to them Uncle Remus